All right, so Optim Finance, huh? Looks like we've got a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Especially in their documentation, this Optim Finance documentation.pdf. DeFi on Cardano is always something I love to learn more about. Got to find new ways to make that ADA work for me.
For sure, for sure.
So basically, it seems like Optim Finance is kind of like a DeFi toolkit, right? All about earning passive income in the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it.
And we'll be focusing on two of their main products, from what I understand.
Right.
Liquidity bonds, and then also the OADA token system.
Yep, those are the big ones. And they both have some pretty unique features, especially with how they leverage Cardano staking. You'll see what I mean when we get into it.
Okay, so first up, liquidity bonds. I've got to be honest, I've been seeing some buzz about these, and I'm still wrapping my head around the whole concept. It's like renting out your ADA's staking power. Is that even possible?
That's a pretty good way to put it. Instead of just holding your ADA and getting those regular staking rewards, you can actually lend out the right to stake your ADA with liquidity bonds.
No.
The borrower gets the rewards for a period of time that you agree on, and you, the lender, you get paid interest on that loan.
So it's like I'm a landlord, but instead of renting out an apartment, I'm what? Renting out my ADA's ability to earn rewards.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And just like a rental agreement, everything's all laid out, crystal clear, in a smart contract, interest rate, length of the rental, every detail.
Oh, okay.
And that makes sure everything's transparent and it's all enforced automatically on the blockchain.
Transparency and automation. Gotta love that about DeFi. Now, I see here in the documentation that they mention two types of these liquidity bonds, SPO bonds and ISPO bonds. What's the difference between those? And, for our listener out there, why should they even care about them?
Great questions. Let's start with SPO bonds. SPO bonds are all about supporting new stake pool operators, which is super important for keeping Cardano decentralized.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So to be profitable, a stake pool has to attract a certain amount of ADA delegation. But for brand new SPO, that can be a real uphill battle.
That makes sense. It's like starting any new business. Tough to get that initial momentum.
Exactly. So SPO bonds give people an incentive to delegate to those new pools. You're supporting the growth of the network and potentially getting a nice boost to your own returns in the process.
So win-win, potentially, for both sides.
Exactly. Now, for ISPO bonds, they're a little different. These are connected to initial stake pool offerings, or ISPOs.
SPOs, right.
Think of them like a way for new stake pools to launch and attract delegation right from the get-go. When you buy an ISPO bond, you're essentially amplifying your staking power during that initial offering period.
Interesting. So if that ISPO takes off, you could be in a good position to reap some rewards.
You got it. It's a bit like getting in on the ground floor of a promising new venture. But what really sets these bonds apart, both SPO and ISPO, is the whole non-custodial aspect.
Non-custodial, yeah. That was something that really jumped out at me, too, when I was reading through all of this.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
You never actually give up control of your ADA. It's locked in the smart contract, yes, but you still own it.
Which is huge for people concerned about security.
Absolutely. But it also opens up some really cool possibilities. Like imagine being able to delegate to a private pool,
Ah.
something that just isn't possible in Cardano's normal staking system. Liquidity bonds could actually make that happen.
Okay, now that is fascinating. That kind of flexibility could really shake things up. All right, so liquidity bonds, that's pretty cool stuff. But now let's move on to something else that really caught my eye. The OADA token system.
Okay, yeah.
It seems like it's a whole other level of earning yield on your ADA, but with like a few extra twists.
It is, it is.
Ah.
The OADA system is definitely designed to be a bit more dynamic,
Yeah.
and flexible.
More so than just staking ADA normally.
And just basic ADA staking, yeah.
Okay, well, walk me through it then.
Yeah.
The documentation mentions two different tokens, OADA and sOADA. It's
right.
like a dynamic duo, but for DeFi.
Okay, yeah. So they each have their own kind of superpowers.
Yeah.
OAD is the stablecoin.
Uh,
It's pegged to the value of AD. So if you're looking for that stability and predictability, OAD is what you want. It's great for trading. Or using within other DeFi protocols on Cardano.
so OAD is like the steady, reliable one, always holding its value.
Exactly.
But then what about sOADA? What makes it so super?
Think of sOADA as the yield-generating powerhouse.
Okay.
It's designed to give you better returns than you'd get from just staking AD.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty appealing, but I gotta be honest, I'm getting a little lost in the weeds here.
Yeah.
How does it all actually work? The documentation keeps mentioning these things called AMOs,
Right.
but it all seems very abstract.
Don't worry, it's really not that complicated once you break it down.
Okay.
AMOs, which stands for Algorithmic Market Operations, those are really the key to the whole thing.
Okay.
They're like these automated strategies running in
Yeah.
the background, working to generate profit for the whole system.
So give me a concrete example here. How can an AMO actually create yield?
Okay, sure. So imagine an AMO that lends out OADA,
Mm-hmm.
right, for stablecoin loans on Cardano.
Okay, yeah.
That lending activity, that generates interest. And that interest gets paid out to everybody who's holding sOADA.
Oh, okay.
So your sOADA is always increasing in value, driven by all these AMOs working behind the scenes.
So it's like having a whole team of experts out there working for you, finding the best opportunities to grow your ADA.
Exactly, like a team of financial advisors, but they're all algorithms.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. I see the documentation lists a bunch of different AMOs, all with their own specific jobs. But maybe for a listener's sake, just highlight a couple of the main ones.
Of course, yeah. So one of the most important ones is the Splash DX AMO. This one manages the exchange rate between OAD and ADA on the Splash decentralized exchange.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that OAD stays pegged to the value of ADA.
Keeping it stable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's the stake auction AMO. And this is where things get really interesting. Remember how we were talking about liquidity bonds and renting out your staking rights?
Yeah, my mind was kind of blown.
Well, the stake auction AMO takes that concept to a whole other level.
Oh, wow.
It lets users actually bid on the staking rights of the ADA reserves that are held within the whole OADA system. And the highest bidder gets to basically rent those staking rights for a specific epoch.
Hold on now. Maybe we should back up for a second and explain what an epoch is, for those who might not be familiar with Cardano's lingo.
Yeah, good point. An epoch in Cardano, it's a period of time, about 5 days,
5 days.
that's used to manage different parts of the blockchain.
Okay.
So basically, you're bidding on the right to use those staking rights for those 5 days.
Right. But why would anyone want to do that? 5 days seems like such a short amount of time.
Well, it might seem short, but it could be really strategic, especially if you want to participate in, say, catalyst voting or those ISPOs we talked about. Having more ADA staked during those events can give you more influence, maybe even higher rewards.
Ah, so you're getting a temporary boost in your staking power
Right.
right when you need it the most.
Exactly. So it adds a whole new layer of flexibility and strategy. And on top of the stake auction AMO and the Splashed X AMO, there's also the potential for things like lending AMOs,
Lending ammos, okay?
which could lend out any idle OADA or collateral. And that would generate even more yield.
It's like they've thought of every possible way to squeeze out more rewards. Pretty impressive stuff. But one thing that's still a bit unclear to me is the whole governance side of things. Who's actually in charge here?
That's a great question. And it leads us to the idea of the ODAO.
The ODAO.
Yeah, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization
Okay.
that governs the entire OADA system.
Okay.
And at the heart of the ODAO is this thing called the SOL token,
A SOL token.
which basically grants control over the system.
So whoever holds the SOL token, they're basically the ones calling the shots.
Yeah, you could say that. Right now, the SOL token is held in a multi-sig wallet.
Multi-sig wallet, all right.
It's managed by a combination of, well, the Optim Labs team, and then also some trusted members of the community.
Okay.
So that way, any big decisions, they require consensus from multiple parties.
So there's like a balance of power then between the core team and the community.
Exactly. Which makes sense for a project that's still kind of in its early stages, you know.
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting. Optim Finance is planning to transition to a fully decentralized governance model eventually. So control of that SOL token and basically the direction of the whole OBDA system, that'll be handed over to the community.
Wow, that's a pretty bold move. It really shows they're serious about this whole decentralization thing.
It really is a pretty cool vision for the future.
Yeah.
You know, putting that power of DeFi directly into the hands of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes you think about like where this whole decentralized finance thing is headed. So we've got these liquidity bonds, right? A way to maybe boost your returns, support some of the new folks coming into Cardano, and then this whole OADA system with its stablecoin and those yield-generating AMOs. What do you see as the common thread between those two products, Optim Finance's products?
I think the big thing is accessibility, innovation, of course. They're taking some pretty complex ideas and making them, I don't know, user-friendly.
Right.
Opening up new ways for people to get involved with DeFi. earn some passive income with their ADA.
It's like they're lowering the bar to entry, right, for people who might have been intimidated by all this stuff before.
Exactly. And they're doing it in a way that's very, in line with what Cardano's all about. Decentralization, transparency, sustainability.
Sustainability, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me going through all this research is that Optim Finance seems to be built for the long haul. It's not just about like chasing those quick gains. It's about creating an ecosystem that's actually like, durable, resilient.
I agree. They've definitely put a lot of thought into risk management, long-term stability, the fact that those bonds are non-custodial, the design of the AMOs, that plan to transition to community governance. It all points to a project that's trying to build something that lasts.
Makes you wonder what they could accomplish, down the road. What kind of impact do you think they could have on the Cardano DeFi scene?
Oh, I think they have the potential to be a major player. I mean, they're coming in with fresh ideas. They're attracting a lot of attention from developers, from investors,
Yeah.
and that focus on the community, that
Yeah.
gives them a real advantage.
It's exciting to see these kinds of projects, pushing the limits of what Cardano can do. So I guess to kind of wrap things up for our listeners, we've covered a ton of ground here. Liquidity bonds, the OADA system, all that stuff. What are the key takeaways you want people to walk away with?
I hope they come away understanding how Optim Finance is creating these new options for earning passive income. Getting involved in DeFi on Cardano, it's really some next level stuff, Those liquidity bonds, the ODA tokens.
And they're really setting an example, I think, with how DeFi projects can be built that focus on community governance, sustainability, all of that.
Absolutely. It's a great example of what decentralized innovation can do, giving people more control of their finances, a chance to be part of a financial system that's more open, more fair.
A pretty compelling vision for the future. So for everyone listening, I definitely encourage you to check out Optim Finance, dig into that documentation we talked about. You might just find your new favorite DeFi platform. Until next time, happy diving.